Good evening, everybody. It's nice to see people returning and coming back to tune into these Wednesday evening Q&A sessions. We will continue discussing the Maha-Asapura Sutta from where we stopped off last week. And hopefully everyone can find the link in the description to this discourse. So again, as we've been framing this discourse, it's one way to think about it is as a number of affirmations or ways to train the mind in a explicitly cognitive sense, that is using specific words to trigger hoped for actions. So we've got all these different rejoinders which read something to the effect of, "Thus, bhikkhu, should you train yourself. We will be possessed of shame and fear of wrongdoing. Thus should you train yourself. Our bodily conduct shall be purified, clear and open, flawless and restrained, and we will not laud ourselves and disparage others on account of that purified bodily conduct," and so on. There's probably 7 or 8 of this type of this teaching in this discourse. I think the main focus or hope for these Wednesday nights is that people should just feel free to sign in. We've got Karina, we've got Sumana, we've got Aiden, and we've got Tan Nisabho tuning in from New York. So people can feel free to enter questions into the chat at any point. And until kind of questions come up, then I'll just continue talking about this discourse because I've really had a connection with this teaching since I think even before I became a monk. So continuing on, if you're following along in the Bhikkhu Bodhi version, this is on page 363, and it's in the middle of the page talking about verbal conduct. So, what more is to be done? Bhikkhus, you should train thus. Our verbal conduct shall be purified, clear, and open, flawless and restrained, and we will not laud ourselves and disparage others on account of that purified verbal conduct. So, if you tuned in last week, or if you've read this discourse before, you'll notice that a lot of the terminology, a lot of the words from this specific training, this affirmation, are the exact same from last week, the phrasing around purified bodily conduct. So basically, this sentence is exactly the same, except for transposing the word verbal in place of bodily. So rather than our bodily conduct shall be purified, now we have our verbal conduct shall be purified, clear and open, flawless and restrained, and we will not laud ourselves and disparage others on account of that purified verbal conduct. And we'll see 2 more of this phrasing with regards to mental conduct and with regards to livelihood. So it's useful to get a sense more of the implications of what each of these words mean, perhaps with some reference to the Pali if that's useful. So our conduct will be purified. As we mentioned last week, purity is not something really that we speak about that much in modern day America, unless it's, say, the purity of your bar of soap, or it's the purity of, a bar of gold, or, these very kind of materialist implications. Or you might have memories of, I think Puritanism and the Salem witch trials and this type of association, which is definitely not what the Buddha is going for. The Pali word is parisuddhi, and suddh is a root which has this implication of purifying or washing or cleaning. And there are several words which take this suddh. You can find suddh by itself as a word like bhante sudaso. That's suddha plus asa. So asa is like a wish or an aspiration, and suddha is pure. So the one of pure aspiration. You also find the word with various prefixes like visuddha, like the Visuddhimagga, the path of purification, or here we have parisuddhi. Pari is like the parameter. Pali is a Indo-European language, so it has many words in common and many prefixes and parts of words in common with Romance languages and other European languages. So the pari of parameter and perimeter are related to this pari prefix in Pali, which is all around, so all around purity. And the context here is really an internal one, and the examination or the focus is really an internal one. There's a really beautiful gatha, or a very beautiful verse from the Dhammapada, which is Suddhi asuddhi pachatang nanyo anyang visodhaye, which means pure or impure. That you have to know for yourself. No one else can purify you. So that's kind of two different angles upon which we can kind of suss out or tease out the implications of this word. So the first one is suddhi asuddhi pachantang. So pure or impure, this is something you have to know for yourself. You have to look inside. This isn't something which other people can judge from outside. So the Buddha does give some pretty clear instructions on purity of speech in terms of different rules or suggestions of how to speak in a way which is friendly and non-combative and non-harmful. But really the essence of the purity that the Buddha is pointing to is an internal one, because as we all know, it's possible to say something with our mouth but not really have that as the truth of what we're experiencing, not really be coming from that same place in our hearts. The Buddha is someone, on the other hand, who as he spoke, he acted, and as he acted, he spoke. So he was totally integrated in terms of body, speech, and mind. There's a wholeness about the Buddha, and that's what we're trying to emulate, so that we have this purity of heart manifesting through purity of speech. And it is something which other people can't do for us. Purity is not something which can be granted to us by some god or by any kind of savior. It's something which we have to work on internally. So that's the purity that we're working on. Purity. Our verbal conduct will be purified, clear and open. This next word, clear, uttana, is both parisuddhi and suddhi and uttana. The purification and the clarity are both terms which we find in relation to water. So we'll have various discourses where the Buddha will talk about a clear and pure body of water. And that's what we are, how can we make our speech pure and clear like a forest pool? If anyone has ever been camping, you may have come across just a pristine limpid, still extremely clear pool of water, which even if it's several feet deep, the water is so clear that you can see the rocks, you can see the dirt at the bottom of this little pond, this little pool, and that's, we want to make our verbal actions, we want to speak in ways which are clear and not duplicitous, which don't have ulterior motives, but are basically what they appear to be. So as we're going through these different kind of descriptions of purity of bodily conduct, it can be good to keep in mind the 4 types of right speech, which the Buddha actually listed as pretty much the definition of right speech. That is, refraining from lying, refraining from harsh speech, refraining from malicious speech or tale-bearing, and then refraining from gossip, or also translated as idle chatter. So basically speaking in ways which are harmless. So each one of these, we want to speak the truth in a way which is clear and pure and open. We want to speak words which are not harsh, words which are friendly, which are open, which are pure. Flawless and restrained. The Pali word for this flawless it's achadita, achidava, which basically means chid has implications of like cutting. That's the root meaning to cut. So it's maybe a more literal translation would be uncut or unbroken is another translation people use. So our verbal conduct will be pure and unbroken. And for me, that's more meaningful than flawless. Flawless just seems like an impossible goal, which we can't really live up to. But something which is unbroken. This is something which you can continually try for. So if you're speaking and you realize that you said something which is untrue, or you're about to say something which is untrue, you can course correct. You can say, oh, actually, sorry, I just spoke too quickly, and then get back on course. What I meant was X, Y, Z. So just repairing, patching up your speech if you have gone off track, and trying to keep the momentum. And kamma is such that it really doesn't take a break. Like there's no holiday for kamma. It's acting all the time. It is questionable whether we're making kamma in our sleep. There are places where the Buddha says that we are not, but basically all of our waking life is, all of our conscious life is, we're making kamma, we're making decisions, we're doing actions of body, speech, and mind. And we want the purity of these different realms to keep going, to not have breaks, because there's fruit and result of good and bad action. And if you say, oh, most of the time my speech is just great, most of the time I'm not angry, I just get angry every once in a while, and when I get angry, it's not a big deal. I just get really angry, but then it goes away really quickly, is what some people say about their anger. Or my speech is just great. Every once in a while I might curse at my wife or my husband, but really I'm pretty good. Which pretty good is better than not good or pretty bad. So it's good to be trying. But one other rejoinder, which we find in each of these injunction, is now bhikkhus, and again, bhikkhus, we can take that here. It literally means monk or alms mendicant, but it is much broader. I mean, it can really apply to anyone who's trying to practice the path, as we're reading it in this instance. So now, practitioners, you may think thus: we are possessed of shame and fear of wrongdoing, our bodily conduct has been purified, and our verbal conduct has been purified. That much is enough. And I'll fill in the ... That much is enough. That much has been done. The goal of recluseship, the goal of spiritual life, has been reached. There's nothing more to do. And you may rest content with that much. Bhikkhus, I inform you, I declare to you, you who seek the recluse's status do not fall short of the goal of recluseship, while there is more to be done. So this is just this, very Theravada Buddha that we see here. Telling us that, come on, there's more to be done. There's more you can do. You can keep going, and it's the kind of Buddha who will just encourage us to keep lifting our sights. And that said, we have to obviously be content with where we're at, but you also want to have an overarching goal. You want to be content with your practice in the present moment, but if you don't have a larger goal, then how can you get there? One very nice simile is if you're doing like long distance swimming, say from one landmass to another, say swimming out to an island, which is hundreds and hundreds of yards, if not miles in front of you, and you swim and you try to be content and with every stroke. But if you want to get to where you want to get to, if you want to go to a specific point on the island, then you have to take breaths and take a look. You basically lift your head up out of the water. Most of the time your head is down, you're doing your strokes, but you still need to take your eyes up out of the water and look, okay, am I actually on target to reach my destination? And that's kind of the attitude that we want to have with our practice, is staying with the present moment, but keeping an eye on something higher. When I said that this is a very Theravada Buddha that we're presented with here, what I meant by that was, it's the picture that one gets of the Buddha in the earliest discourses in the Pali Canon is a Buddha who has a very clear goal and talks about a path, does talk about the goal. And this is not actually the case with every form of Buddhism. And sometimes it's unclear, like say there are certain like Zen teachings, which again, I don't know, can't speak to specific instances, and it's possible that this might be a teaching from practitioners who are actually not that developed. But basically this idea that you actually don't need to do that much. We've got this Buddha nature inside, and that's enough. Basically, we don't need to do anything. What's here now when there's no problem to solve is the attitude. And I can see that as a skillful means, like the Buddha did advise us. Basically, that is the practice of satipatthana. That is the practice of the foundations of mindfulness, being in the present moment. But it is the case in the Pali Buddha, the Theravada Buddha that we see, is that there's more to be done. There's more to be done, and don't hold back. Don't content yourself with second place when there's more that you can do. And again, every person, every practitioner has to figure out for themselves. You have to figure out for yourself to what extent you can handle that. I mean, obviously, everybody is not a monk, and even within monks, there's a range of our capacities for putting forth effort. So you have to look inside for how much you want to be really raising the bar. But these are just some considerations. Maybe we'll take a break, because that was some heavy stuff there. Maybe we got a question from Karina. So regarding otapa, fear of wrongdoing, I've heard recently translated as respect for others. I like the translation of Hiri as upholding self-respect. is self-respect different than having metta? Yeah, this is a very good question because it highlights these different translations of these key terms, and it's useful to find translations which are personally meaningful. Yet, as for otapa, as respect for others, what that is pointing to is a commentarial description, basically delineating that Hiri is the self-respect, as you mentioned, and that otapa is respect for others. And that's an interesting distinction. It's not made in the canon, but I think it is pretty practical. So one practical implication of that insight is that, yeah, I think different people have stronger or weaker Hiri or otapa. So some people have a very strong sense of self-respect. So they will keep their morality, they'll do the right thing even when they're by themselves. Even when they're by themselves, they'll do the right thing because they have this inner sense of, it's kind of, you could think of it as like a wholesome self-pride, a wholesome, wise, non-identified, non-attached, non-egoistic pride in having done good things and being one who refrains from immoral actions. So that's a strong Hiri. Other people might have a strong otapa, but a weak Hiri. So this would be someone who, yeah, if they're out in public, then they're not going to steal, or they're not going to lie to people, or they're not going to waste time, or they're basically going to keep to an upright moral compass. Whereas when they get back in their room, they've got this undeveloped yet undeveloped Hiri. So the self-respect isn't yet as full as the otapa. So you get back in your room and you just like totally let it all go. You just like have no restraints or no kind of clear ideas of how you want to be spending your time, how you want to be using the internet, how you want to be, putting forth effort or not. If that's the case, then it's good to realize that, and it's good to have a name for it. So, I've got, my otapa, it's okay. But my Hiri, I could probably work on that a bit. And when you see that, I say, okay, good. How can I use that to my advantage? So this is something which there's a popular self-help writer named Gretchen Rubin, who's written a whole slew of books, but one of her books makes this distinction between different types of habit holders. So you've got upholders, who are basically the people who have strong Hiri and otapa. They're people who will uphold their morality, they'll uphold their principles, even when they're with others and when they're by themselves. Then you have obligers, who will do the right thing in public, strong otapa, but don't have the strong Hiri. They won't do the right thing when they're by themselves. And then you've got rebels, who basically don't have strong Hiri and don't have strong otapa. Those are kind of frightening people who will basically, don't have a very clear moral bearing. And then you've got questioners, who may have a strong Hiri but a weak otapa. So for obligers, and there are different techniques, there are different skills which we can use depending on what our general propensity is. So I was highlighting that strong otapa, strong public morality, strong respect for others, but weak self-respect. These are the obligers. There are things you can do to make your private life public. You can make commitment strategies. You can get a habit buddy, or you can send emails and tell your friend, I'm only going to spend 1 hour on the internet every day when I'm by myself. And you can make these things public. You can put it on your Facebook page. If you've got Facebook, might as well do something good with it. You can post it to your blog, whatever. And these are just ways of, strengthening the Hiri, strengthening the self-respect by utilizing your already strong otapa. So the next part of the question is self-respect different than having metta? Yeah, there's definitely a relationship between Hiri and metta, between self-respect and metta. And I think Hiri is kind of a deeper appreciation of the principle of metta. So if I really have metta for myself, if I really have loving kindness for myself, then if I was to follow out that logic, then I wouldn't want to do something that's going to be bad for me. So again, it might be easier to do that in public, but when you're alone, you've got this. Maybe your metta, maybe it's a matter of beefing up your metta or maybe like schooling or educating your metta. Like one really useful reflection for engendering metta is, do I want myself to be happy? Do I really want me to be happy? Yeah, do I really want me to be happy? And hopefully you'll come up with an answer, even if you're feeling depressed. I mean, hopefully there's a part of you which can say, yes, I do want to be happy. And the implication, if you take that, the next question is, okay, so what do I need to do if I really wanted to be a happy person in the most intelligent way? Not talking about like the superficial like pleasures of the senses, but more the more profound like joy and gladness which can come from practicing the path, which can come from practicing Hiri and otapa. So self-respect is different from having metta, just in their focus. Yeah, but it's a good question, and I'll definitely continue to think about that relationship, and I encourage everybody else to as well. There's the factors of the path, the different skillful mental qualities that the Buddha is talking about in all of his discourses really form this web of it's like connected neurons. Where we're trying to grow in all these different connected ways. They're not disjoined virtue. We've got metta, and it's got no relationship to otapa, and we've got compassion, and it's got no relationship to mindfulness. I mean, all of these things I think do have a relationship, and it's a fascinating, rewarding intellectual exercise to figure out, to think about what those relationships are, and more than that, more than just the intellectual level, but to really bring it to a practical and felt level. Like what does metta feel like in the body? What does Hiri feel like in the body? Just answering for myself, like Hiri is this, metta, loving kindness, is this almost pulsating. It's certainly around the heart region for me, but it's this pulsing kind of radiating like warmth and kindness. Whereas Hiri is this kind of upright, very erect and doing the right kind of thing mind. And you can have both of those. You can You can have your erect spine, and you can have your soft and warm heart. We continue on a little bit with the discourse. Yeah, so this is purifying our verbal conduct. And let's see. Maybe rather than jumping into the definition of right speech from a different discourse, we just continue with the Maha Asapura Sutta, even though it's moving out of the realm of speech. So I'm going to continue on with purifying mental conduct. But please, feel free to put in some questions if you have questions on verbal conduct and purifying that realm. As we maybe one linking this training, this affirmation of verbal conduct to our training of mental conduct is the last factor. So both our verbal and our mental conduct shall be purified, clear and open, flawless and restrained. This quality of being restrained. This is another concept which is pretty underrated and underdeveloped, and even the word is somewhat, it's definitely not something which most people use on a daily basis, like talking about restraint. It's, again, American connotations of restraint are, you've got straight jackets. This is, something to, restraining. This is, your boyfriend puts a restraining order on the girlfriend, and the girlfriend puts a restraining order on the boyfriend, and, you've got the police putting people in, restraints, and restraints are synonym for handcuffs, this type of very negative, unhelpful connotations. But restraint, it's another concept in the Buddhist canon, which is a very, very bright and beautiful mental quality, which is to be cultivated. There's another Dhammapada verse at the beginning of the Bhikkhu, the chapter on monks, which it says, restrained by eye, restrained by ear, restrained by nose, restrained by mouth, restrained by body, restrained by speech, restrained by mind. One who is restrained in all these ways is fully restrained and will reach the highest peace. So that's the type of restraint we're talking about. We're talking about the intentional curbing of unhelpful acts of body, speech, and mind in order to, with the goal of inducing happiness and peace. So we have another friendly question. So, how have you found your relationship with the concept of restraint has changed since ordaining? Yeah, certainly before I came across the Buddhist teachings, restraint was something that I hardly ever thought of. Being raised in a culture a family which really loves personal freedoms. Like restraint almost seems like the opposite of that. You've got freedoms, and then you've got restraint, which are holding back all of your freedoms. And I definitely wasn't into it, not a concept that I thought of at all. But yeah, as a monk, there's kind of like the suttas, in a way, we can think of, like, for myself, the Mahasatipatthana Sutta was like a gateway drug, or it has this stepping stone effect. So if people don't know this, the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, or the Foundations of Mindfulness, Digha Nikaya 22 or Majjhima Nikaya 10. This is, I mean, pretty much, this is the sutta which forms the foundation of like modern American, European, Western ideas of secular mindfulness, because it's such a beautiful sutta. There's no really, I mean, there are some aspects which are, questionably religious or dogmatic, but really it is a matter of just focusing on one's present moment experience and shedding the biases of aversion and craving, which cloud our seeing of things clearly. But yeah, that was my gateway into these Buddhist discourses. And yeah, the more discourses that I read, so I loved that Satipatthana Sutta, the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, and then I'm like, oh, maybe the Buddha has something to say. And so I just keep reading, and I think other people find this the case as well, and you're like, oh, the Buddha's talking about restraint a lot. Maybe maybe it's not about repression. Maybe it isn't like something which Christian monks flagellate themselves about, whatever that is. This kind of vague notions of Christian monastic self-hatred, which I think many people have, even though most people have never met a Christian monastic. But yeah, I see this idea, oh, maybe there is something to this restraint. If the Buddha's talking about happiness and peace and overcoming of suffering all over the place, and he says a method to do that is through restraint, then maybe he's onto something. So maybe there's something that I was missing. Follow-up question is, what's the hardest area for me in terms of restraint, and what has helped? As monks, I mean, our monks' rules, we got so many rules. And I mean, really we are like restraining ourselves in many ways. I don't know about the hardest area, but yeah, just speech. Restraining speech is, it doesn't come naturally for most of us. We weren't raised in households or in societies or among groups of friends who had any clear idea or clear channel or mores and personal rules for how to speak and what types of speech to avoid. There are vague ideas about lying, but yeah, harsh speech or tale-bearing, telling jokes about other people, or just kind of talking about whatever, without really any clear clear idea of why we're talking. So definitely, restraining my own speech is something which is a continuing lesson, which I continue to learn. But you have lots of good mirrors for that in a monastery. I'm sure there are many lay settings where you would also have many good teachers, and certainly many, I don't know about many websites, but there are forums that do have principles. Like Sutta Central is a great website. They have, in Discourse at Sutta Central is a wonderful website, and they have moderators who are hoping and trying to keep the conversation within bounds of right speech. So curtailing, curbing, and leading people away from contentious or conflictive and overly disputatious and aggressive speech. But at a monastery, got such great examples. I can name people. Tan Kantiko, Tan Sudiro. I could probably name everybody in the monastery and say what's beautiful about their speech, but these two monks in particular are very quiet, but their quietness is not coming from either a place of having nothing to say or from an aversive place, but of, yeah, just, oh, maybe I just don't have to say that, and being content with silence. So that's, yeah, a very hard lesson to learn for people who are not, inherently introverted, or who, are not, fully in tune with their introvert and quiet, contented self. So that's one area of continual work. So yeah, maybe I think that will be probably enough of the reading, rather than trying to go into the mental realm. But yeah, it's been enjoyable. It's great to have other people here. I wish we were all in public, in person. Hopefully that'll happen at some point. Yeah, so as people are probably starting to realize, this YouTube page is associated with Clear Mountain Monastery. You can go and visit clearmountainmonastery.org. It is the aspiration, this is from the website, is the aspiration of a Thai forest monastery in the Pacific Northwest. And Tan Nisabho is the spearheader of this project, and he'll be boots on the ground, flip-flops on the ground in July. Is not yet sure where. There's not yet a place. So right now, Clear Mountain Monastery is just a virtual community, which all of you are a part of. But hopefully at some point it will manifest in land and maybe some small buildings, and burgeoning, beautiful community. And myself, hopefully I'll be joining in as well. I'm currently studying Pali and Sanskrit at a Buddhist university, Dharma Realm Buddhist University in Ukiah, nearby Hiri, and I'll be visiting, for the remainder of my time here, I'll be visiting Clear Mountain Monastery during winter and summer breaks, and then after that I will, hopefully come and be a more long-term resident, if indeed there ever is a place to be resident at. So yeah, thanks everybody. All right, people are saying goodbye. Goodbye, everyone. Great to see you. Hope you have a good rest of your evening, and hopefully see you this upcoming weekend. We've got another talk on Sunday morning at 10, and then you can check out the website for continuing episodes. So take care, everybody.